What are the best and worst space-saving furniture items for maximizing space in your home? Well, in this video, I'm going to be breaking down some of the most popular pieces from S for super and F for fail. And at the end, I'll be crowning one item as best of the best by raising it to S tier plus, and another as worst of the worst by demoting it to F tier minus. For items to be saved from this F tier of shame, I'll be judging items in 5 key areas. Functionality, in providing a significant functional advantage over their non-space saving alternatives. Ease of use, so that you can actually be bothered to utilize these space-saving capabilities frequently. Durability, to stand up to the daily household wear and tear over the course of several years. Aesthetics, as you actually have to want to bring this furniture in your home, where I'll be trying to be as objective as possible. And finally, the item's cost, which should be justified based on the performance of the other 4 key criteria. First up, to get the biggest offenders out of the way, we'll start with beds, as these are likely the biggest furniture item in your home that gets the least amount of use, especially as most of the time that's spent in it is usually unconscious. Despite Ottoman beds being able to swallow a huge amount of items by combining storage with sleeping, they're usually pretty expensive, heavy to open, and once they are open, they require a significant amount of bending and reaching in order to retrieve or organize anything that's kept in the middle, which requires unnecessary strain and effort for items that you frequently need to access. And so, because of their often hefty price tag and lack of functionality over standard beds that can usually utilize shallow storage boxes underneath, these are going straight in the F tier, and really the same goes for most storage beds. However, because other storage beds at least make access to your storage easier and more aesthetic, I'm going to move these up to D tier. Now, this isn't to say that all storage beds are bad, but when it comes to saving space, there are a lot of other alternatives that can get you a lot more in the realms of pure functionality. One bed that appears to save a significant amount of space when compared to a typical bed would be something like a sofa bed, which, to state the obvious, combines the aesthetic and ergonomics of a sofa with the functionality of a bed instead of trying to offer storage. Now, because these have integrated mattresses and occasionally clunky folding mechanisms, unfortunately these are known to be uncomfortable to sleep on, especially as the integrated mattresses can often be quite thin and the mechanisms a little bit uneven. And so despite being suitable for the occasional guest, it doesn't really make them that suitable for daily use. Which is why when compared to a bog standard sofa that's simply long enough and comfortable enough to sleep on, this limited functionality makes me want to put sofa beds in F tier. But purely because these can sleep 2 people instead of 1, while hiding this functionality so well, this just about justifies a move up to D tier. Now, in contrast, frameless sofa beds specifically do a far better job at this, by essentially being a stack of folding foam mattresses which provides the improved comfort, durability, and simplicity of having no mechanism, while, in my opinion, looking rather smart. And so, because it meets these criteria of comfort and durability so well, I'm going to move these up to B tier, as they're simply ideal for hosting guests in the living rooms of small apartments or office/guest rooms. However, a more affordable and purposeful alternative to these would be the daybed, which provides this same functionality but with replaceable mattresses and a wooden frame that also has storage. Which, despite not being quite as good looking or as comfortable when in sofa mode, I'm going to inch these up into S tier purely because of their lower price, added functionality, and the choice of mattress, which allows them to be replaced as you need to, as well as whatever you choose to cover them with in the case of any damage. And because these can still be used as a sofa without the requirement of removing bedding every time that you put it away, this makes them just as suitable for your main bed as it is a guest bed, which is something that can't be said for any of the other types of space-saving beds so far. Another poorly performing household furniture item when it comes specifically to saving space is shelving, as this is because it leaves everything that you ideally need to store on shelves that are meant for displaying things. which is a difficult thing to make look good when maintaining both accessibility and efficiency when compared to cupboards. And so when considering that space-saving furniture typically combines two functions together, the worst use case for this is when it's also used as a room divider, which tends to make for an incredibly bulky and inflexible way to subdivide a space, especially when you compare this to the lightness of a curtain or a sliding screen, which is why this is going straight in the F tier. However, one exception I will mention is that when this type of shelving is put on wheels, they can be a fantastic way to make deeper storage spaces more accessible, as rolling carts and lightweight shelving can be easily hidden yet pulled out as and when they're needed. And so because of this, I'm going to promote these two items to C tier, along with other rolling items such as kitchen islands and drawer units that provide similar levels of flexibility. But of course, comparatively, enclosed storage tends to be far more efficient, despite not technically being marketed as a space-saving piece of furniture specifically. And so this is a reason why I've chosen not to include these in this list. However, what I will say is that within this category, what tends to stand out are cabinets with fixtures like pantry cupboards or pull-down shelving, which can completely transform the usability and efficiency of a kitchen. And despite their sometimes higher collective price, because of this, these are going straight into the A tier, as a product that finds space in places where it would otherwise be going to waste. However, following this thought and even taking it a step further, shallow cabinets such as vertical shoe storage and even doored bookcases do a great job at this because they can often be fit in circulation spaces in areas where nothing else quite seems to fit. And so I'm going to promote this kind of shallow storage to A tier and vertical shoe storage to S tier, simply because when wall mounted, they cause next to no obstruction when walking past them, as they still leave room for your feet and elbows, essentially utilizing the corridor space by your legs and hips that would otherwise go unused for clever storage. When it comes to saving space, there is also so much space to be found underneath seating too, with furniture items such as storage ottomans and modular storage sofas. Now these especially shine at hiding living room clutter in plain sight, which is especially useful for busy parents like myself, as they easily open up, essentially acting as bins in which you can throw inside stuffies or train sets or other items such as blankets and cushions. And as these usually look quite decent too, while being equipped with relatively robust and simple lids, these are going straight in the A tier, as modular sofas and ottomans are already versatile furniture pieces on their own to begin with, where this added functionality of storage usually doesn't come with a significant raise in the price. But of course, the space-saving furniture that we're all probably the most familiar with is folding furniture, with chairs, stools, and tables all being typically affordable and lightweight items with often surprising durability from brands such as Costco, where these can be easily hidden inside a closet or behind a sofa and then be quickly pulled out to magically increase your hosting capacity. And so because of their wide availability, various styles and affordability, I'm thinking these have to go in B tier, as I don't think that I can quite justify putting them in A tier, as they're usually not quite good enough aesthetically for daily use. Unless of course you do have the budget to go down the designer route, and so because of this is usually the one thing that tends to hold them back. Additional folding furniture also would include tables, as aside from the camping and barbecue variety that we're used to seeing outdoors, in homes, wooden gate leg dining tables and folding wall-mounted desks tends to be the more permanent options. But unlike folding chairs, I'm going to have to put these in C tier, as despite being quite good at saving space, their functionality is usually quite compromised, as by limiting the room for your feet and legs, they can be quite irritating to sit at. And when it comes to folding desks, because they need to be cleared in order to fold, this limits you to a laptop-only setup. However, I will say that if you do have the patience and incentive to set these up well, they can work very efficiently when paired with a wall-mounted monitor or all-in-one PC. That is, if you can get your head around all of the cable management and connectivity requirements. But if folding chairs don't quite sit well with you, an alternative is to go down the stacking route, which sacrifices foldability and portability for durability and sturdiness, where I believe that these are equally as good, but just for slightly different purposes. So these are going straight in A tier, especially as these can look pretty much just as good as most regular chairs in some cases too. However, when it comes to stools, these have a significant advantage because they don't have backs. And so this dramatically reduces their size and their versatility, as they can be used as side tables, and they can even look neat enough to be left out when stacked. And despite being not quite as comfortable as chairs for longer sitting, their simplicity provides durability and the ability to cater to additional use cases, which I think just about puts them in low S tier. And when it comes to nesting tables, despite their occasional usefulness, they really provide the exact same functionality as a stool without the ability to sit on them, while typically looking quite busy and redundant, which is why I'm going to put these straight in the F tier. Okay, so we've covered folding furniture and stacking furniture, and so these next two categories of extending and transforming furniture are even more exciting, as this is where some significant space saving can be made. Now, dining tables, just like beds, are one of the largest furniture pieces in your home, and similarly, they only get used a limited amount during the day, depending on your lifestyle. And oftentimes, with larger dining tables, only a small portion of them even gets used every day. And so, because of this, extending dining tables are incredibly effective at saving space, with some tables having the ability to shrink to the size of a console, yet extend to seat up to 10 people. And if you don't need your dining table to shrink down quite this small, for more frequent use, 4 to 6 person dining tables with integrated leaves allow them to seat a couple of additional persons without having to find a space for you to store them. And so with both of these styles of extending dining table, because of their ease of use and their sheer versatility, these are going to go straight in the A tier, where you can find several shapes and sizes at various different price points to suit different spaces and lifestyles. Now, it's worth mentioning that extendable benches can also be paired with some of these items. However, since stacking stools exist, other than for aesthetic reasons, benches generally make little sense for seating when it comes to space saving, simply because they're so awkward to sit down at. And so, despite being almost functionally identical to extendable tables in many regards, I'm going to have to move these down to D tier, as they really don't provide all that much functionality for the space that they save. Now, moving on to transforming furniture, transforming tables are another great space-saving option, which seem to be the most optimal way to include a dining table in a studio apartment, simply by turning the coffee table into a dining table using an ironing board style mechanism, with some of these also having the ability to extend in order to seat larger groups too. However, because of the movement of the legs, it can be hard to operate these with a rug or carpet underneath. And so when removing either of these, it can compromise the comfort and aesthetic of a living area. And also because of the softness and depth of most sofas, these can be quite uncomfortable to dine at for longer periods, due to a sofa's seat height and lack of back support. And this is why, despite wanting to put these in A tier because of their impressive dual functionality, I'm going to have to put these in B tier just because they're a bit awkward to live with. Alternatively, you can avoid these problems with an Ottoman lid style coffee table by raising the tabletop up and out towards the sofa. But because of their size, these are only really suited to couples who tend to eat in front of the TV. And along with the fact that coffee tables themselves take up huge amounts of space in smaller homes, despite offering very little in the way of functionality, I'm going to have to put these in C tier, simply because they have a very limited use case for what I think is their most important function. But arguably one of the most well-known transforming furniture pieces of all time is the Murphy bed, which by allowing the biggest and least consciously used furniture item in your home to fold up against the wall, it instantly frees up acres of space. And thanks to clever new mechanisms and customizable features, modern day Murphy beds are often effortless to use and can even be folded down over other pieces of furniture such as sofas and coffee tables too. However, there's no avoiding the fact that their biggest drawback is the fact that they aren't cheap and often require careful planning and assembly in order to get them right. But when you do, the returns are usually enormous, in essentially giving any room dual functionality by hiding a bed against the wall that can be deployed without having to refit sheets or slide out heavy mattresses, which puts the Murphy bed straight into S tier. And really, the only bed that can trump these is the loft bed, but because loft beds require a home with incredibly high ceilings in order to work comfortably, this limited use case is going to have to drop them down to B tier. But before I crown one furniture item with S tier plus and shame another with F tier minus, you may be interested in hearing about the sponsor of today's video, Bellroy, as a company that prides themselves in making efficient, aesthetic, and logical space-saving products. Their newly released sustainable and repairable luggage range is unlike any I've seen before, with entirely replaceable wheels, handles, lock, and packing cells to keep your suitcase rolling for years to come, as well as a beautiful design that skillfully balances durability, comfort, weight, and aesthetics. And you can also expect this same level of detail to the other long-standing items in their product lineup too, that ranges from inventive wallets to premium organizers and bags that artfully provide space for everything you need while on the go. Along with clever touches for wherever you're headed, whether that's trips to the office or hitting up your nearest trail, Bellroy does this all using sustainable materials and production methods as a certified B Corp. And so to learn more, be sure to check Bellroy out using the link down in the video description and get 10% off your entire purchase or 20% off my lightweight travel bundle with my 2 favorite lightweight bags. But finally, after ranking all of the furniture in this video, if I had to pick one space-saving item to promote to S tier plus and one to demote to F tier minus, it would have to be the Murphy bed and the Ottoman bed. As when it comes to freeing up the most amount of space when you're really desperate for it, nothing comes close to how much space a Murphy bed can save, which is really what makes them such a popular choice for studio apartments. And in my opinion, this just about inches it over the more affordable daybed simply because of its ease of use, comfort, and cleaner aesthetics. And of course, when it comes to furniture that makes you think that you're freeing up space, but aren't really, I struggle to think of something that does this quite as well as an Ottoman bed, as these make it so hard to retrieve anything that, from my observation, they're often just cavernous boxes for items that you probably don't really need to begin with. Now, if you are an owner of one of these, this isn't to say that they are altogether useless, as they can make a lot of sense to store bedding in homes that have multiple guest rooms. However, if you are finding yourself short on space, they do unfortunately come as one of the most inefficient ways to blow your budget thanks to their high price and limited functionality. Now, of course, this video has only showcased some of the most well-known space-saving furniture items from a mostly functional perspective, without really considering all too much the importance of overall aesthetics of an interior or other space-saving products such as inflatable mattresses and storage containers, which are all important things to consider when setting up your own home. And so do let me know down in the comments if you'd like to see more videos like this on those topics, and maybe check out some of my other suggested videos on screen too. But finally, I just want to say a huge thank you, especially if you made it all the way to the end of the video, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and turn on notifications, and I'll be sure to see you in the next one.